Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is The C.L. Bryant Show.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to The C.L. Bryant Show. I am so glad that you are able to join us here today. We are streaming live throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known, and that is the United States of America. And of course, the show emanates from my hometown, the jeweled cities of the Arklatex, Shreveport, and Bossier City. And I want to welcome aboard those people from southern Arkansas and East Texas here today. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have a pretty jammed show today. Of course, we will be taking your phone calls a little bit later on in the show at the 6:30 hour, 320-5335, 320-5335. On with me first today will be Super Bowl champion Burgess Owens, 10 years in the league, but he's written a book now. It's called Liberalism, or How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps. We're going to be talking to him, and love to later on in the show get some feedback from you on that interview. And also a good friend of mine, his name is Dan Cummings, who is now the pastor of the Jefferson Gathering in Washington, D.C. I first met Dan over in a place called Bullard, Texas. He called me over to do something called Come Pray With Me. And since then, we've both gone our separate ways and all of that, but he remains great friends, and he's going to be on with us to talk about Paul Ryan and the experience that he has there on Capitol Hill. Dave McMillan. You all know Dr. Dave McMillan, one of the great personalities right here locally, will be in studio with me toward the end of the show. You want to hang around for him, and one of the great minds in this area, a fine individual, and I'm very glad to call him friend as well. Well, here we go. In America today, we have to examine what is America like since the Obama administration, since his time in office is beginning to wind down. Let me tell you what America has been like over the last 8 years during the Obama administration, since Obama has been president of the United States. This is the news. 11.5 million more people are on food stamps in America. That's the USDA report. 7 million more in poverty. Average employers' sponsored health premiums are up. That means if you have insurance on your job, your premiums are up. If for a single person, $1,427. For a family, $4,170. Household incomes are down on average of $185. And that's a census, or that is a research center that has have those figures from 2009 up until June 2016. Your share of the national debt now is 59. That's every man, woman, boy, and girl. Everybody, your share. The children that are riding next to you and we're riding in the back seat of the car right now, your share of the debt is $59,783, nearly $60,000 per person. Department of Commerce released those figures. And under Obama, and this is what makes no sense to me, I'll be talking to Burgess Owens about this as well. Under President Obama, blacks on food stamps is up 58%. Blacks in poverty up 8%. Out of the labor force, blacks who are out of the labor force, up 19.6%. Home ownership down 4.6%. Overall, we have the worst labor participation in this country since the 1970s. That's when Jimmy Carter, he and Barack can toss a coin as to who was the worst president. Since Jimmy Carter, back in the 70s. The worst labor force participation since then. Home ownership rate is the lowest since the late 1960s. And he will be the first president in our country's history who will not have grown who will not have grown the GDP, gross domestic product, by at least 3% in our national history. Yet, he has doubled the national debt. And he has endorsed Hillary Clinton. So my question is, what? These figures are I have vetted these figures through the National Census Bureau, the USDA, Kaiser Family Foundation. I have vetted these figures. These figures are real. This is truthful. This is not spin. This is not smoke and mirrors. This is what is happening right now in this country. And he has endorsed Hillary Clinton. And the same people who are victims of these numbers that I've just given you, who voted for Barack Obama, are also going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Go figure. I can't figure it out. Overall, it is the worst presidency that has occurred in American history. That's America today. Fort Smith, Arkansas, domestic disturbance, has a standoff going on up there. Gunfire has erupted. Also, in Michael Brown's Ferguson, there was a memorial they were doing for Michael Brown. People started shooting at the protest or at the people who were marching in memorial of Michael Brown. 2 years he's been gone. And this is one thing they can't do. They can't blame the cops. The cops weren't shooting at him. I wonder who was. I wonder who was shooting at the protesters there in Ferguson. I mean, not the protesters, but the people who were trying to memorialize the fallen. You know, he was the guy who tried to jack up the little guy in his store. Michael Brown, he died as a robber. They were memorializing him. And somebody shot at the marchers who are memorializing him. I wonder who that was. I'm CL. Back with Burgess Owens in just a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. CL, back with you on this Wednesday. Here we are midweek, the Arklatex, and it is great to be with you. We're streaming live throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known, America. And I want to tell you something, folks. There is a book out. It's called Liberalism, or How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps. It's written by a Super Bowl champ. His name is Burgess Owens. 10 years in the league, and he is a friend of mine. Burgess has been on the show before, but I want to welcome him back right now to the C.L. Bryant Show. Burgess, thank you so much for being there.
CL, thanks again, my friend, for inviting me on, and let me join you. It's nice to be talking to another Black American who understands how blessed we are to be the friend.
Absolutely, and I tell you something: the slings and arrows that is thrown at, that is shot at conservative Black Americans in this country. Burgess, your book. Let's talk about it for a while and where we can get a hold of it and all of that. But first, tell us what was the motivating factor behind writing such a book? Very catchy title, Liberalism, or How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps. What was the catalyst for that?
Well, CL, you and I have had this conversation before, so let me just real quickly brief those who are in your listening audience of the greatness of my race. How proud I am to have grown up in the segregated South of the 60s and to have been around men and women who really were manning up and women up and were proud of who they were. As a celebration from 1865 until 1965, the Black race was one of the most competitive, Christian-based, moral-based race and forces to be dealt with, and that's why they had to use stealth. The Democratic Party had to use stealth to integrate themselves within it. We were, in the early 60s, over 50% of Black Americans across the country were part of the Black middle class. We had the highest percentage of entrepreneurs in our country, the highest percentage of men committed to marriage up until 1965. We were so competitive as a race that the Democrats had put together something called the Davis-Bacon Act in 1932 to protect the all-white unions from Black entrepreneurs. We have been a force to be reckoned with, and the only way they can get into our community was through the NAACP. So I can get into that when you just let me know.
The NAACP, Burgess, I want to go back because I'm a former president of an NAACP branch, and I left the NAACP because I saw what the design was. I saw what they were wanting to do. And when you look at the Democrat Party and you look at the NAACP, you know, white and black people know that the NAACP is a working arm of the Democrat Party. So with people like that, you're saying that they have turned an entire generation, maybe two generations of men into whiners, weenies, and wimps. That's a strong statement, man. Go on.
It's interesting because the dichotomy, it was interesting, and I wrote this about my book, are the tremendously brave, courageous, visionary Black people who bought in to the lies of the Democratic Party and the NAACP. The NAACP was not started by Black people. It was started by wealthy, white, socialist, Marxist, atheist, race-controlled Democrats. The antithesis, by the way, of the Martin Luther King Sr.'s community at that time, Christian, capitalists, and entrepreneurs. And they had to use a black face, W. Du Bois, who was a socialist and communist, ended up leaving our country, to put the message through. And once our race got to where we trusted it, we believed in the message. That message was integration and socialism and the liberalism that they now are dealing with today. But that's not the end of it. That strategy has moved on to today's time. BET, Black Entertainment TV, is not a black-owned company. It's white-owned for the last 15 years by very wealthy Democratic Socialists and cowards Democrats, white Democrats, the Redstones and the Viacom. And for the last 15 years, their fire hose our community with anti-white, anti-police, anti-family, pro-abortion, liberal mess. So if you want to know, well, why is our community so angry and so unsuccessful after having such a great start? How is that 83% of our Black teen males are unemployed across this country? 70% of our Black men leave their kids when they have them. And we have 1,800 Black children being aborted every single day, and it's looked at as a celebration. That is the Margaret Sanger breeding of thought and action by a very dark, evil ideology.
Absolutely, Burgess. And you know what, Burgess, when you look at those figures, and then you look at Barack Obama endorsing Hillary Clinton, who, by the way, is a disciple of Saul Alinsky. And we listen, I got to have you back so we can talk about Saul Alinsky and what all that means, period, and Margaret Sanger and what all that means, period. But I was going over some figures before you came on. Under Barack Obama, blacks on food stamps, Burgess, have risen 58%. Blacks in poverty is up 8%. Out of the labor force, up 19.6%. And black home ownership down 4.6%. Yet, you want to call Donald Trump a racist. Now, the racist is the person in the White House who looks like a black man. That's the racist.
Yeah, well, people have to understand, CL, and that is the ideology of socialism is a very unique one. It's based on atheism, it's based on elitism, and it's based on the fact that there's a class of people, blacks and whites, who believe they're better than everybody else. That's why W. Du Bois was so tail wagging to join Margaret Sanger's abortionists, because there are people like our president who truly believe that his ideology, his class, and his little group of elitists are so much more important than those 2,000 black children that he took off of the school program. The first act he did when he walked into office was make sure those kids got off of a very successful 93% rate of graduating. Took them off and put them back into failing schools because his allegiance is to the white liberal agenda, which is Marxism and social. I shouldn't say that's white. That's an agenda for blacks and whites. And the fact is, we have people, unfortunately, that are called the royalty black class. That's part of that.
The royalty black class, which means that people like Al Gore and the Bill Gates crowd and the Hollywood liberals who ride around in the limousines and fly all over the world in their private jets, they too then are the royalty right liberal crowd. Is that right?
Yes.
And so go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you there. Yeah, that's the royalty class, and then the people that we have to be most concerned about is our royalty black class. That's the politicians and elitists. And let me just give you the good news real quick.
Hold that thought. Hold the good news till after the break. Back in just a few minutes with Burgess Owens, author and Super Bowl champ, when I return. CL back with you on this Wednesday, halfway through the week. I'm grateful to God for that. We're on with Burgess Owens, Super Bowl champion, but now author of the book Liberalism, or How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps. And Burgess, you were going to express an idea about how that happens. Continue.
I just wanted to first of all, for those, as we talk through this process, and we will continue to see that there are answers out there. And my suggestion for every white American who's listening to this discussion, first thing I suggest you do is you stop apologizing for being who you are. Don't apologize.
Say it again, Burgess. Say that again very clearly and very succinctly so that my audience, which is probably, I'd say, 85, 90% white, can hear you say this again. Say it again.
Do not apologize for who you are. You Americans whose ancestors did the best job in any country around the world to make sure that we're seeing each other the very best way we can, from inside and not outside in. Not only is that an insult to your generation who fought and died for our country to elect a black president, but it's a great insult to my race. My parents, my parents' parents worked very hard to gain the respect of Americans. They did their job. We now need to do ours.
Hold it right there. I don't want this to be wasted, Burgess, because you see, a lot of times we try as Americans, black and white, we try to make amends for things that did, in fact, happen in the past. And yes, we did level the playing field and all of that type of thing, but at this point in time, the only thing we can do, since there is nothing you can do about the past but to live from this point into the future, the best thing that we can do is do exactly what you just said, is to understand that your parents, my parents, whether they were black or white, they did the best they could and they contributed in the best way they could so that you and I can have this conversation today. Go on.
And what they did was give every one of us an opportunity to have a much better life and have a much better dream. So don't apologize for them, and don't apologize for yourself for something you didn't do. Because I definitely don't want you to take credit for the success of my race. And by the way, if you don't understand the success of my race, you need to read my book to find out that we were doing just fine until these cowards, bullies, and racists got into our community.
That's beautiful. You know what I might do? I might couple your book with my movie, Runaway Slave, because these principles together can actually turn lights on. Continue.
It's the same. It's the same presentation, buddy. The other thing is we need to pull back the curtain on the Phil Dorman. This is Viacom and the owners of BET. BET is the seedbed of Black Lives Matter. It's a racist, anti-cop, anti-white, anti-American organization done purposely by a group of wealthy Democrats who are trying to breed our votes. They breed hatred and misery in our community, and their answer, of course, will be vote for Democrats. So Phil Dorman, Sherry Redstone, the board of directors, I call them strictly big-time cowards, bullies, and racists. We need to pull back and have them come before us. This is their organization. Explain to us about Black Lives Matter. And every time a policeman is killed, they need to come before us and tell us what do they think about Black Lives Matter. Here's the other part. There's 20% of black Americans who have the same values as you and I do. They love their country, they love our race, they love our future and our kids. We need to stop voting principle first instead of party. If we're capitalists, let's stop voting for socialists. If we're Christians, truly Christians, Christians do not vote for atheists and socialists. And if we believe in educating of all our kids, we need to stop voting for these elitists, the Barack Obamas out there, that put their kids in the best school possible to make sure the poor kids be in the worst school possible so they can vote Democrats one day.
I really like your message. I love your message.
Think of our kids. If we believe the sanctity of our kids, we cannot vote for the Margaret Singers of blacks and whites out there who believe our kids are nothing but weeds. It is genocide what's happened to our race. 16 million black babies out of a population of 40 million today, and we happily go down the road skipping and jumping and dancing and saying how great it is, not understanding what we're doing to the heart and soul of our race.
Amazing.
We cannot see ourselves as anything worthwhile. We can't see our babies worthwhile.
How do we get a hold of your thoughts and ideas in your book, liberalism, or how to turn good men into whiners, weenies, and wimps. Where do you get it? Give us your website. I only have about a minute and a half left, Burgess.
Okay. You can get it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com. I'm going to invite everybody to join my Facebook. I'm talking on that every single day, giving little pieces of my book and discussions. And the goal is to have a respectful discussion between both sides of the aisle to make sure we're bringing our country back. So join me on my Facebook, Burgess Owens. And of course, pick up the book and spread the word that we can get this thing turned around, guys.
Listen,
Yeah,
man.
I appreciate your efforts, my friend.
Oh, anytime. I got to have you back to see how things are going. And as this election season and cycle progresses, I am definitely going to want to hear from you. Michelle will be in touch with you, no doubt about it. God bless and God keep you. Fight the good fight. I know you will, Burgess, because you are fighting the good fight. Always good to talk to you, friend.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. Let's keep it going. Take care. Bye.
Burgess Owens, the author of How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps. That's liberalism. Liberalism, or How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps. Folks, and that's exactly what is happening. You have a lot of whiners about things that we can do nothing about, and we have wimps as far as men having children and not taking care of them. And you have people who are weak-spined, lily-livered, and spineless, who don't have the intestinal fortitude to face the challenges of America today. And that is all because of a progressive liberal idea that will be perpetrated continually by Hillary Clinton for the next 4 to 8 years if you are not wise enough to stop her from grabbing the mantle of Barack Obama. I'm CL. Don't go anywhere.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
Welcome back. It is I, your native son, C.L. Bryant, and I want to welcome aboard everyone throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known. That is America. And joining me now is someone I have known for a number of years. In fact, I met him first in Texas, a place called Bullard, Texas. He was doing a gathering called Come Pray With Me. Met him as a very humble man he is, he and his wife, Joanne. Now, they reside in Washington, D.C., and Dan Cummins is associate pastor of Skyline Church in San Diego. He also presides over the Jefferson Gathering, a weekly worship service in America's capital. Dan and Joanne were the originators of the historic prayer event, Washington, a Man of Prayer, held annually now for the past 5 years in the statuary hall of the capital of the United States of America. That's the first time in 140 years a private citizen and Christian organization was granted permission by the Speaker of the House, John Boehner at that time, to actually do that. And now Paul Ryan is letting him continue to conduct that service. I want to welcome for the first time to the show a good friend and somebody who I really and truly admire, and that is Dan Cummins. Dan, welcome to the C.L. Bryant Show.
Thank you, CL. What a privilege it is for me to be on your program today and to talk with you, that we have to go on a radio program for us to get back together and have some fellowship.
Isn't that amazing? You know, it's amazing how our paths have gone, Dan. We didn't know how things would turn out for us once we got involved in this grassroots thing that was going on nearly 7 years ago now. But here we are. You're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing, and the way the Lord worked it out, our paths will continue to cross. Dan, you are doing some outstanding things there in Washington, D.C., historical, monumental things. Tell us about the gathering there, the Jefferson, the Thomas Jefferson gathering that happens weekly. What is that about?
Well, as you've already stated, about 6 years ago, we started holding just rallies in our county there in East Texas, and then we went to be a part of Governor Perry's event, and then we approached Speaker of the House John Boehner 5 years ago to see if we could do an annual event in Statuary Hall to honor George Washington as our first president and the first act of Congress, which was to have divine services to dedicate America to God, and miraculously John Boehner granted us that permission. And after doing that for 3 years, going up to D.C. from Bullard, Texas, God began to move on our heart. By that time, we were good friends with Dr. Jim Garlow, Skyline Church in San Diego, who had been helping us personally with these annual events. And we decided it was time that God would move us up to D.C. and that we would begin church services on Wednesday evenings for members of Congress and staff. Members, as you well know, are not there on the weekends, so we decided we did a lot of research, a lot of great ministries on the Hill focused on Congress, but no one was actually doing a church service. So we worked with the members that we'd been working with the previous 3 years, got them to sponsor what we were doing, and 2 years ago, on July 30th, we had our first Jefferson Gathering worship service. We called them the Jefferson Gathering after President Thomas Jefferson, who was a president at the time in 1800 when they began these church services. Jefferson rode his horse from up Pennsylvania Avenue every Sunday in all kinds of weather to come to church, and presidents after him all the way through Garfield attended church on Sunday morning in what is now called Statuary Hall, the original House chamber for the House of Representatives. And so after a 144-year absence, the Lord just miraculously, and that's the best adjective we can use, is that miraculously allowed us to begin holding church services again. And in the past 2 years, we've had over 150 different members of Congress attend. We've had several ambassadors. We've even had a chef from the White House attend. But most importantly, CL, we've had 5 people give their heart to Jesus there in our nation's capital.
That is amazing, Dan. Let me ask you this, because most people are not aware just how common it was for the people of the day, back in the day, 144 years ago, to actually attend services and even Bible study there in the Capitol building. Now, we have basically eradicated that until you and Joanne came along. We had basically eradicated that out of Washington, D.C. It was very common, wasn't it? It was a part of American expectations then, wasn't it, for the elected officials of that day to actually be men of faith, was it not?
Absolutely. In fact, 6 months before Congress moved to D.C. in 1800 to officially occupy what was then just the original Senate side. They didn't have the full dome and the House chamber built yet, but everything started on the Senate chamber. But not only in the Senate chamber, but in the Supreme Court chamber, they held church from 1800, and then in 1807, the president.
Well, wait a minute, Dan. The Supreme Court, who tells folks that no, the little coach there in Oregon, I think it is, tells him that he's gonna lose his job if he prays with his football team. That Supreme Court was once used for church service, Bible study. Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding. Imagine, in fact, I live right across the street from the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. Imagine on Sunday morning me going over into the court chamber and getting up where the justices sit, opening my Bible, opening the front doors, allowing citizens to come in and worship Jesus Christ. But that is exactly what happened in our nation's capital from 1800 to 1869. As many as 2,000 citizens would come in to the Capitol to worship Jesus Christ. 3 days after Thomas Jefferson wrote that famous letter to the Danbury Baptists, which included the phrase "a wall of separation," which has been so grossly misinterpreted today, 3 days after writing that letter, he was sitting in the Capitol. He had employed the Marine band to play as the praise team. The Marine band would play the hymn.
The Marine band was the praise team.
Yeah, so my question, CL, if I could see Thomas, would be, what part of separation of church and state did you not understand? But, of course, as you and I well know, that wall of separation of church and state was not to keep the church out of government, but it was to keep the government out of the church. And
amazingly, Dan, the government right now is doing everything it can to knock down and trample or to knock its way or to barge its way into the lives of people of faith. When I come back with Dan Cummins, I want to talk to you about Speaker Ryan, what you feel about him and how you are getting along up there on Capitol Hill. And I'll tell you a little about when I knew that Dan was in Washington, D.C. when we return. I'm CL. We'll be right back with Dan Cummins. CL, back with you on this Wednesday evening, broadcasting from the jeweled cities of the Arklatex, Shreveport, and Bossier. I want to welcome aboard all of our friends in southern Arkansas, as well as over in East Texas and throughout the Fruited Plains and the world. Download the free CL Bryant app onto your smartphone or Android device, and you can listen anywhere you go. We're on with the pastor of a weekly gathering there in the Capitol building, oftentimes attended by the Speaker of the House himself, Paul Ryan. He is Dan Cummings, pastor of the Jefferson Gathering there in Washington, D.C. Dan, when we came back, I wanted to speak with you about, first of all, Paul Ryan. Met him a couple of times, and also wanted to get your take on Donald J. Trump, because we are having a lot of people who are of our ilk, Christians, but they have reservations about both Trump and Ryan. You know Trump, you know Ryan very well. Please give us some insight into the character of the man.
I tell people all the time, God's playing chess and we're playing checkers. And God is so, his ways are so far above our ways, and he's light years ahead of us in what he's doing. And without a biblical worldview, we cannot understand American politics, because all American political renewals or revivals have followed spiritual awakening. And I am telling people without equivocation that for the last several years, the church in America has been praying, 2 Chronicles 7:14, and God is answering our Protestant evangelical prayers, I believe, in a Roman Catholic wrapper, and that is Paul Ryan.
I like that. He's wrapped in a Roman Catholic package.
Paul is a faithful Roman Catholic, but he is also a passionate follower of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And I think one of the greatest things that Joanne and I have experienced is getting to know Paul on a very personal level as a brother in Christ. And to get to the point, Joanne and I, along with our worship leader, this past January, were invited to the Republican retreat in Baltimore, Maryland, which, as you know, only members and their spouses go to the retreat.
Right.
And we found ourselves there because our worship leader, Steve Amerson, was doing a concert. And because we worked with Father Conroy, the house chaplain, Joanne and I went to Mass early Thursday morning, and it was right at the time after Boehner had resigned. We'd worked with John Boehner for 4 years. We worked with his staff. Everything we do in the Capitol is through the House, the Speaker of the House and his staff. And suddenly, we found ourselves facing a new speaker, a new staff. I did not know Paul Ryan, did not know any of his staff. And so here we ended up at the Republican retreat in Baltimore, and in a Catholic Mass, and sitting right behind me is Paul Ryan. Now, Joanna had ended up sitting on the very front row, and when Father Conroy when it came time to serve communion, he said, "Paul, come up and help." So suddenly, Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, is standing right in front of Joanne and me with the Lord's Cup. We were the first to take communion, and we were served the Lord's Cup by the Speaker of the House. And after Mass was over, we ended up alone with Paul Ryan in the room for 30 minutes. And Paul really shared his heart with Joanne and me. And he said, "Dan, if we do not have a spiritual awakening soon, we are in rough days ahead as a nation. We could very well lose this country. We need spiritual solutions to our problems, to our crisis." And he asked me, he said, "Will you help me get evangelical pastors to the Capitol so I can dialogue with them and seek advice from them? And I want to develop an email alert system where I can email pastors and tell them how the church can pray for America." And so I know we don't always agree with everybody's politics. You're never going to find one politician going to agree with everything. In fact, the only two people I know is you and me who've got our politics straight.
Yeah, you're right.
Sometimes I worry about you. but we have a man of God in the House leadership right now as the Speaker of the House that understands where we are historically from a biblical point of view. And I might add he is a avid fan of historian David Barton.
That's very good, David. David is David and Tim are very good friends. And let me say this to you. Let me ask you this, because I have about 3 minutes left, Dan. But I want to sort of make a transition here. Then, why then is there a rift or is there a rift between Ryan and Trump, and why, in your opinion?
Well, honestly, I could not answer that. I do know that as Speaker of the House, Paul is leading the entire party, not just one faction of the party. But we have invited. We already have brought 200 pastors to the Capitol for him to meet with, and we're bringing that many more in this fall. And if we want to look at the ticket that we presently are facing as a Republican Party, then we have to look at the platform. I don't care who you have a conflict with as far as their personality is concerned. This election is not about personality. It's not about Donald Trump. It's not about Paul Ryan. It's about 2 to 4 Supreme Court justices that will be appointed to the Supreme Court by the next president.
You betcha. That's exactly what it's about.
And this particular Republican Party platform has been nicknamed the Tony Perkins platform because Tony and FRC and a lot of other fundamental organizations, Concerned Women for America, Alliance Defending Freedom, a lot of these organizations had tremendous impact on this, probably the most biblical platform the Republican Party has ever had. And so if people want to argue about, I'm not going to vote for the lesser of two evils, unless Jesus Christ is on the ticket, then you've always voted
for the lesser of two evils.
and our civic duty, CL, our civic duty is not what is best for me. I have to make decisions, and God will hold me accountable for my civic responsibility in how I vote, not what's best for me, not what makes me feel good because I voted for I'm not going to vote for the lesser of two evils. How we will be judged by our vote is how does it affect society? It's not about me. It's not about my theology. If I vote, how does my vote affect society? If I don't vote, that is, in essence, a vote for the other party.
I do like it.
If I don't vote for Trump, that is, in essence, a vote for Hillary.
Yeah, a no vote is a vote for her. That is the way to look at it. Dan, what's the website? How do we get a hold of your thoughts? How do we get a hold of what you're doing?
WashingtonAmenoprayer.com, WashingtonAmenoprayer.com, or TheJeffersonGathering.com. And there you can find information on how to get in touch with us.
Well, from Jane and I to you and Joanne, listen, God bless and keep you. You got to make it up down here to get some gumbo. We got to make it up there to get some seafood. And either way, it'll be a good reunion. God bless and God keep you both. Be safe up there in the nation's capital. I'm up there a lot. In fact, I'll be up there in a couple of weeks, Dan. I'll give you a call when I'm on my way up.
I would like to make an invitation to churches who are listening. We take after-hour tours of the Capitol, and we take them into the Rotunda to pray and worship and sing. Our goal, CL, is to have a church group in the Rotunda every night of the year. We have special clearance from the speaker and others to be able to do this, and God has just given us such great favor. Prayer, not policy, is going to change Congress, and it is changing Congress right now. More Christians in the 114th Congress than in any Congress since Calvin Coolidge. God is not through with America yet.
Fantastic, Dan. God bless you. God keep you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, CL.
I'm CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. We're going to be back with more in just a couple of minutes.
To that whole mile on the range, they got a lot of nice girls. I'm racing.
Yeah. Born to run, no doubt about it. And it is a race to the finish line for the presidency of the United States. That is in full force, full gear. This is America Today, folks. I'm C.L. Bryant, and this is the C.L. Bryant Show. And I told you about gunfire erupting there in Ferguson the other day at the Michael Brown Memorial March, where for some reason, whoever was shooting at them, I can guarantee it wasn't police officers. So they can, the hands up, don't shoot, folks. They can't blame police officers. But I tell you something that does disturb me, and it should disturb you as well. In Chicago, where I'll be here in just about a week and a half, Chicago gangs are conspiring to kill police officers. Now, this is after the deadliest month that Chicago has had in 10 years. 65 people were killed in Chicago in the month of June. Yeah. 9 people were killed just last Monday night. Just this past Monday night. 9 people were killed in Chicago just this past Monday night. Now, hands up, don't shoot. I don't know where they are on this. And when you look at the overall murders that have occurred in Chicago, the hometown, adopted hometown of the president, 430 people so far in Chicago have been killed. And you have gangs conspiring to kill police officers in Chicago as we speak right now. They're trying to figure out how to get revenge for the kid who stole the Jaguar and rammed it into the police cruiser and then jumped out and ran and met his demise. They're trying to figure out how to get revenge for that. So the revenge that they're going to get is to kill police officers, which leads me to this thought. Too many times, people who feel as though they have been disenfranchised or done wrong or what have you are mad at an incident, but they don't understand that there are people who they take that out on who had nothing to do with the incident. There are people who are mad at historical events, who like to take out their frustration on people who look like the people in their minds who had something to do with the historical event, and they have nothing to do with it. My point, you can't be mad at an incident and take it out on folks who had nothing to do with it unless you are unbalanced. And that is exactly what is driving the lunacy and the foolishness that's going on in America today. You have people who are unbalanced in the way they view the reality. The reality is that an incident happens in itself. And yes, you may want to protest what happened, which is your American right. You may want to speak out against that, which is your American right. And you may want to see that that never happens again. But you don't do it by launching an attack against society itself. That, my friends, is unbalanced in your thinking. When you have people who have participated in historical events, and as much as I revere John Lewis, who is a true civil rights hero, as much as I revere him in his contribution to to civil rights. John Lewis spends a lot of time living in the past, yet he enjoys the fruits of Capitol Hill. He spends a lot of time talking about how he was crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge and reliving an event when the Edmund Pettus event will never reoccur. You can march across that bridge from now until Jesus comes. But the times and the circumstances that brought that about have passed and gone. And the only thing that you do when you try to relive historical events, and when you're mad at history, and when you're mad at events, you only inflame passions that you can never put those flames out because the event is past and gone. And so there you are living with anger, mad at people who had nothing to do with it, and you are left with the unsatisfaction, the dissatisfaction of not being able to satisfy your anger because you're angry at something that you should not be angry at in the first place. And that is a historical event. It's history. Okay, somebody unfortunately lost their lives. That was an event. The only thing you can do is to make sure that it doesn't happen again in the most peaceful way possible. I'm CL. Be right back. CL, back with you on this Wednesday evening. I'll soon be joined by my good friend Dave McMillan, and you'll be able to hear a wonderful radio voice and a great guy who is renowned throughout the Arklatex area. And but we were talking about, when I left here, the gangs in Chicago and how they are plotting. So many of them are plotting to kill police officers. Now, folks, I was talking to you about sometimes, and I'm going to talk with Dave about this too when he comes on. I was talking about to you sometimes people, the strangest thing happens, and that is we get mad at incidents that occur. We get mad at historical events that occur. And there are people in our society who find a way to make a living off of making you and me angry, or people angry at you and me over something that happened 150 years ago. That's not intelligent. That's not. Because there is nothing that you can do about it. You can't do a thing about what happened to Grandma and Grandpa. But remember that they paid a price for you to be where you are today. And then you have to ask yourself the question, what are you doing with that? And then you have to ask, how am I blowing this by being stupid over being angry over an incident that I can't do anything about? Even when a person, unfortunately, and God forbid that it happens to any one of your family, any one of my family, God forbid that happens. But folks, this is insanity. When you are angry at society wanting to kill police officers over incidents. We'll take your calls at 318-320-5335, 318-320-5335 if you want to tune in or chime in on anything that we have talked about here today. Now, Julian Assange, who is somewhere in the Netherlands, indicates that 27-year-old Seth Rich, who was murdered just a couple of days yesterday, he was shot in the back. He indicates, you remember the leak that happened to Debbie Wasserman Schultz that caused her to lose her position with the DNC? Well, at first they blamed that on the Russians. Somebody was trying to blame that on the Russians. The leak about how Debbie was handling Bernie Sanders and how she was being unfair to him. You remember that? Well, they wanted to blame that on Russian hacking. Well, evidently, Julian Assange thinks that is different. That is a different story there. Julian indicates that the 27-year-old DNC staffer, his name is Seth Rich, who was shot in the back yesterday in the streets of Washington, D.C., was his leaker, was his source. Now, nothing was taken. What the indication is, it wasn't a robbery. That the purpose or the reason for his being shot down, because nothing was taken from him. And Julian Assange has put out a $20,000 reward for anyone who can help find or lead to the murderer of this kid, Seth Rich. Now, we were laughing, well, we weren't laughing about it, but we were talking about this, that maybe Debbie Wasserman Schultz put out a revenge hit on this kid because she knew that it wasn't the Russians, but it was Seth who dropped a dime on her and got her job taken away from her. That's America today. It's happening all over the place. I told you about the over 400 murders that have occurred in Chicago just this year. No word from Hands Up, Don't Shoot on that. Oh, Al Sharpton is absolutely silent. Jesse, where'd he go? The president. It's his adopted hometown. Just Monday, 9 people were murdered in Chicago. You don't hear that in the mainstream media. I'll take your calls, 318-320-5335. Michelle, who do we have? On the line with me is Lorraine. Lorraine, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for calling. What's on your mind?
Hey, I just wanted to know if you're aware that the movie Hillary's America is playing in Shreveport or Bossier. I think it's Bossier.
Yes, ma'am. I have gone. Jane and I, my wife and I, have gone to see it. My good friend has put that out, and it is, in fact, a fine film. Have you seen it?
Not yet, but I do plan to.
Yes. Let me say this: that Dinesh, he and I made our first films, because he's been much more successful than me, has much more exposure than I have. But he and I made our first movie the same year. And we premiered it at the RNC 4 years ago. His movie and my movie premiered side by side in theaters there in Tampa, Florida, just 4 years ago. And we're going to have Dinesh on with us here, hopefully it'll be week after. I'll be in and out. But just he's going to be on with us. And maybe the next movie that comes out of that ilk, Dinesh and I are talking about doing that together. And so I'll be talking to you about that. But go see Hillary's America. It'll tell you this one thing. Hillary has been a co-conspirator and an enabler. We're going to talk to Dave McMillan about enabling here a little bit later on. Thank you so much for your call. Thank you, Lorraine, for listening. I'm CL. We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Once was a sweet thing, baby.
CL. Wednesday, in the jeweled cities of the Arklatex, Shreveport, and Bossier. It is I, your native son, here with you tonight, and we are talking about enabling and how so many times there are people who enable those who will loot and burn down their own neighborhoods because they make them angry at certain incidents. Now, I just had a call. Lorraine was on with me just a minute ago, and she asked about Dinesh's movie, Dinesh D'Souza's movie, Hillary's America. Jane and I did go and see that film over this past weekend. And of course, if you follow me at TheCLBryant, at TheCLBryant, I tweeted him out, kudos to it, and I tagged at a runaway slave. That is the Twitter handle of my film, Runaway Slave. And the thing that I wanted to do was to make certain that you understand that she was an enabler. And I have a young people all the time that I talk to across the nation who don't really know her, who don't know what type of enabling she was doing. This Monica Lewinsky thing's now a part of the history books for young people, but they don't understand that Hillary wasn't really mad at Bill for Monica. She was mad that Bill got caught. She knew who Bill was for a long, long time, and that is one thing that Dinesh brings out so clearly in his film. Now, there are some portions, the first part of that film, the middle part of that film is very disturbing because you're wondering where he's going with all of the racial facts that he puts in the film. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but go see it. Even if I told you about it, you still have to see it for yourself. It's just that intriguing. And I want to talk a little bit more about that with Dave McMillan here in just a minute. I'm going to bring him in. But let me share this with you as far as where we are with the American psyche. And there's nobody better than Dr. Dave McMillan to talk to this about, and that is where the American psyche is at this point. I'm going to bring him in because he has his own show called Strategies for Living. And if you haven't tuned it in, you want to tune in his show, Strategies for Living, because there are ways now, there are strategies that we must consider in the way we live our lives from this point on. But when you see a Will Smith, the actor, you know, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, when you see Will Smith in Dubai trashing an American candidate for president of the United States, and then actually glorifying the ideas of progressive liberalism in Dubai on foreign soil, it gives you an idea of where the mentality is, especially in Hollywood. There's an actor by the name of Antonio Sabato who came out for Trump, is now blacklisted. He's blackballed. Can't get work. He had jobs lined up. They're now canceled because he came out in support of Trump. Now, I talked to Rick and Michelle, who are two of my team, about this. Now, listen, the police, as far as who they are and their job is concerned, Rick and Michelle live their individual lives, right? Now, it is true that most of the times black folks have no idea what's going on in the lives of white folks, and white folks have no idea what's going on in the lives of black folks, and that's the way it is, period, even with your next door neighbor. But for the most part, you don't know what they're doing. You don't know, in this day and time, you don't even know who they are. They can be anybody. But this is my point. If Rick and Michelle got pulled over by the cops, even though they work for me, they get pulled over by the cops. Unless they bring me into the situation where I'm going to care about what's happening to them, I'm not going to know about it. They're not going to tell me. And because they live their own individual American lives, I don't care what they do, as long as they do their jobs. And they don't care what I do as long, I guess it's all right, the little paychecks that I pay. They really don't care. And so what I'm getting at is this. When we look at the police forces and the atrocities that so many say are happening to them around the country by police officers and so forth, you are looking at a very minimal amount of incidents that go on. Truly, you are. And the reason why you have this Black Lives Matter thing going on is because they think that somehow all of us should be in tune to what is going on. There's a certain narcissism that is going on in this country because people have lost sight of their purpose. And so their purpose becomes wrapped up in their race. Their purpose becomes an identity of race and skin color. And what I'm trying to say to America is that we as individuals are so much more than that. We make ourselves small when we boil ourselves down to just a color in saying that because my skin is black, I matter. No, because you are endowed by your Creator with certain unalienable rights as a human being.
1 minute.
You matter. There is a profound difference in what you can do with your life with that type of approach than looking at yourself solely from the prism of color. When I return, I'm going to have on the line with me clinical psychologist, and I hope I'm presenting him right, Dave McMillan of Strategies for Living. I'm CL. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the C.L. Bryant Show, and we thank goodness that you have made us the most listened to talk in the Arklatex at this point in time, and want you to keep it up. Thank you so much. Go to the download the free C.L. Bryant app onto your iPhone or your Android device, and you can go to our webpage at TheCLBryantShow.com and like us on Facebook at The C.L. Bryant Show. Now, joining me is the host of Strategies for Living. He is none other than the legendary, you'll recognize his voice right off the bat, the legendary Dave McMillan, Dr. McMillan.
Checks in the mail.
No check needed, man. I mean, you've earned it. You've earned it. Welcome.
Thank you, CL.
Back to the C.L. Bryant Show.
Well, thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to be, always a pleasure to be with you.
And folks, some of the times when I'm going to be out, Dave McMillan has been gracious enough to take on the chair when I'm gone. From now until the 8th of November, I'll be in and out of town, and capable hands.
No gracious to it. I'm just improving my own ratings. I know how to catch on to somebody's coattails. You know.
Well, we certainly do appreciate you, and of course, Michelle she keeps the train on the track. And
yeah, I got to tell both of you, I so admire. I've listened to you. You and I talked on when I interviewed you on my little television show.
Yeah.
And I shared with you that I've listened to this show from the very beginning, back when it was named something else.
Yeah.
And have listened to the evolution of this program and of you as a radio host. Yeah. And I just so admire what you guys have done.
Well, bless you. Thank you for that.
I know I haven't looked at a rating book in years.
Check it out.
But I can only imagine what that rating book is showing that this show is doing in the marketplace. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you very much. We're very pleased with it, and all glory to God. Dave,
Amen.
We were talking about enablers.
Yes.
And we were talking about people, an enabled society, a society that may even be codependent because of the enablers. Now,
or you're into psychobabble this afternoon, aren't you?
Pastoral counseling is my background.
There you go.
Yeah, that's my background. And so even though I don't have your credentials, I know I've read a lot of stuff about that because of the congregations and stuff that I've pastored. But Dave, how much on track is that type of description of the psyche, the psychology of America, or the mindset of America today, in your opinion?
I think, in my opinion, it's just right on target. I think that we live in an extremely reactive society, in a reactive world, and that's the basis, really, for a lot of our issues and problems. CL, they can be traced back to that. So whether you use codependency, whether you use enabling, no matter what you choose to label it, what we're really talking about here is a reactive society.
Is that what we see in the hands up, don't shoot? Is that what we're seeing in Black Lives Matter? Is that a reaction?
Yes.
To what, though? To what?
Well, to perception, to perceived victimization. Let me share with you. If you think about, if you were to ask me, what do I mean by reactive? Well, someone reactive as opposed to someone who's creative. Someone who's reactive just goes along. It's just rote. It's just a rote choice. There's no conscious choice as there is in creativity. A reactive person expects magic instead of having realistic expectations.
Wow.
A reactive person is all over the place. A creative person has their energy focused.
Wow.
A reactive person is into criticism and contempt and blame, as opposed to working autonomously, which is what a
An
creative,
individual effort.
an individual of what a creative individual or creative family or creative society does. A reactive person feels threatened, whereas a creative person is trusting and knows that even if my body isn't physically safe, I'm safe.
Let me ask you about this, because see, the perceived victimization, and the reason I want to deal with that is that I have drank, and I think I've shared this with you. I have drank from black and white, colored and white water fountains,
Right.
ridden on the back of the bus, went to Negro Day at the fair.
Right.
Maybe then I was a victim of a societal ill, but I don't carry that
Right.
with me here into 2016, because I think it would handicap me. We're going to talk, man, that went by real fast, Dave. I think that handicaps. We're going to talk more about this on the other side
You
of the
bet.
break.
You bet.
When we come back.
And I
because-
want to talk to you about a 3-room house.
All right, fantastic.
When we come back.
When we return, I'm on with Dr. Dave McMillan. I'm CL. I Can't Get Away without hearing what Dr. McMillan has to say about this three-room house. And I'm sure it's something that every one of us will benefit from. Dave, take it away with that three-room house scenario.
Did you know that you lived in a three-room house?
I don't know.
CL?
I didn't know.
You didn't know? You do.
I didn't know.
Did you know that every one of us lives in a three-room house?
No, sir, I did not.
Well, we do. We all do. Think about this. Psychologically, we all live in a three-room house.
Wow.
What the heck does he mean? Well, there's only 3 rooms that are available to us in our mind: the past, the present, and the future.
Wow.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what happens when we are in the past. Because here's my theory, CL. I believe that most of us spend the majority of our time, maybe 80% of our time, living in the past and in the future. And that makes us reactive. All right, so think about the past. So when I go into the past, when I'm in that room psychologically, it's like somebody turned the lights on. I can see everything so clearly. So if I had just moved that pin that's right in front of you, then it would have, this wouldn't have happened, and that wouldn't have happened, and this wouldn't have happened, which eventually ended up you suing me, and you won $400 million, and I'm in the poorhouse, and look at where you are.
Wow.
So I go to move this pin. And in the past, that pin won't move. In fact, nothing, even though I can see it so clearly, nothing in the past will ever be able to be moved.
So we waste our time when we start talking about I should have done.
We go beyond wasting our time.
Wow.
We go beyond. If it were just wasting our time, that might not be so bad. But what happens, the more time we spend in the past, because you can't move anything, you're going to get angry. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to get depressed.
Wow.
Now, let's go over to this other room. In the future, have you ever had the occasion to be driving in heavy fog?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And
Live in Florida.
close to the house? I mean, you knew right where you were.
Yeah.
Maybe you were 2 or 3 streets away from the house, but you're in heavy fog. How do you feel?
Insecure.
Yeah.
Lost.
Afraid. Yeah. Even though you know right where you are. That's exactly where we are psychologically when we choose to be in the future. It's as if someone has filled the entire room up with smoke, and even though I think I know where I am, I'm going to be afraid because I can't see in front of me. Now, if we spend 80% of our time in the past and in the future, you only have 100%, right?
That's it.
So if I've spent 80% of my time in the past and in the future, it only gives me 20% to be in this big room, the present, the now. And so if I want to move that pin, I can move it over here. And if I don't like it over here, then I move it over there. It's the only room that I have power.
Is now.
Remember that I'm talking to a pastor, so I should apologize for this. But how does God refer to himself very early in the Bible?
I am.
Okay, not I was,
right?
Not I will be.
I am.
I am,
right?
Which means now,
right?
The present. We live psychologically in a 3-room house, but we choose at any point in time which room to be in.
Wow.
Now that to me relates exactly to what you were talking about a moment ago, because if we choose to live in the past, which is what so many people are doing these days, it's going to evoke a reactive mentality. That is the basis of so much of what's wrong with society and our world and our country.
Dave, that's powerful, man. Let me tell you why it's so powerful. It's because you have these movements that hinge upon things that happened in the past.
Right.
People who I call race hustlers.
Right.
who make their living off of things that have happened in the past. And even when they talk to things about what could happen in the future, that itself is very foggy.
Right.
Because they're not doing anything about what the murders that happen in Chicago. That happens daily.
Right. What are we going to do now about this?
Now. And folks,
because it's the only place you can't create in the past. You can't create in the future. You can only create now.
Wow.
I am.
Wow.
That's what God referred to himself as. I am the present.
Wow.
The precious present.
And it is so great that his mercy is fresh every morning,
Amen.
every day that you wake up again.
Because it's a new now.
It's a new now.
It's not yesterday. It's not tomorrow. It's a new now.
I love it, man. Folks, when I'm out, you can look forward to hearing more from this great mind right here in our midst, Dave McMillan.
Checks
Dave,
in the mail.
Dave, I want to thank you so much. You know, Michelle and I have talked about getting you in for some time now. We've talked about it for some time now, and so in the fullness of time, it is now. You did it. So we're not going to worry about what was. We're only going to worry about what's now. I really like it, folks. I'll be back to close it out here in just a couple of minutes. So glad that you have joined us here today. I'm CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. Back in just a couple.
Been dazed and confused for so long, it's not true.
CL. We're back here to close it out, and I want all of you to understand that we live in very perilous times. There's no question about it. So we have to be, as Thomas Jefferson instructed us to be, and that's vigilant. Jefferson warned us that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. That's TJ. Thomas Jefferson said that. And if we're not able to, and Dave, I'm gonna be using that 3-room house from now on until the Lord calls me out of here about 60 years from now. I'm gonna be using that 3-room analogy for a long time, man. That was a jewel.
I want to hear the first sermon. I want to have an invitation to the first sermon that's preached on that.
That's a jewel. Yeah,
Amen.
okay, you got it.
You got it.
That was a jewel, and folks, I hope that you were able to capture that and put it away for yourself and use it yourself, because that's what, this bridge to conversation that we are building and have been building here for over 2 years now is sharing things that you can capture and then use in your own daily walk of life with others who were looking for just that thing that you can easily describe as to where we are and how we got here. And so we have to be vigilant, because that is the price that we have to pay for our liberty, is to be watching for those things and people in particular who will take it away from us, take it away from you. There has been a great price paid for the nation that we live in. And of course, all of that is in a house that is in the past. And of course, we cannot see the future, and sometimes the clouds hang even very low here in the present. And with that, I want to thank God for bringing us to the close of yet another day. I want to thank Him for our men and women in uniform around the globe who defend our right to speak our minds. And until I'm able to talk to you again, I'm CL. And may God bless and keep you all.
Left behind, we'll stand by your side, and the bond